Good evening, and welcome to the January 10th, 2022 Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting of the Lower Merion Board of School Directors. We're asking that those attending tonight's meeting in person to please wear a mask, and your mask should remain on when giving public comment at the podium as well. The board believes it's in its best interest and the best interest of the students of the district to hear comments from district residents. An opportunity will be given for public comment in person and through the chat feature, which will be read by Ms. Buckman. This meeting is being live streamed and video recorded with sound for public broadcast. All participants joining via Zoom will be muted upon entry. Thank you all for joining us today. We have several exciting presentations talking about our K through 8 reimagined programming, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mameen.
Thank you, President Klein, and good evening, everyone. Before we move forward with tonight's presentations, allow me to take a moment to recognize the Board of School Directors, as this is School Board Directors Month in Pennsylvania, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So with your indulgence, I'd like to take a few minutes at tonight's meeting to shine a spotlight on the valuable contributions of our school board members who volunteer their time, expertise, and leadership to serve all the residents of Lower Merion and Narberth, especially our children. This is an exciting time for the district, as our current board represents a mix of both newly elected and experienced directors who all have something in common: a passionate commitment to quality public education for all of the children of Lower Merion and Narberth. They devote countless hours each month to school business, taking the time to understand the often complex issues, opportunities, and challenges that we face as a district and as a community. I feel honored to work with each member of our board, and I know that our students, staff, and community join me in thanking you for your service. At this time, I would like to read the PSBA, that's the Pennsylvania School Boards Association's resolution, which was unanimously approved in 1985 and reaffirmed at the Pennsylvania School Boards Association's December 13th meeting in 2021. It was their governing board meeting. So I will begin. For School Director Recognition Month, January 2022, whereas the role of locally elected school officials has served the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and local communities in meeting the needs of public education since the passage of the Free School Act in 1834. And whereas these local boards have discharged their responsibilities to public education in a manner which has placed public education in the forefront of our educational systems. And whereas locally elected officials have distinguished themselves and their communities in this non-paid volunteer public service commitment. And whereas the contributions of these men and women should be recognized and appreciated by those who benefit from the workings of our public school system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Pennsylvania School Boards Association hereby proclaims the month of January as School Board Director Recognition Month in this Commonwealth, and further resolve that this proclamation be communicated to all school districts, school officials, and local communities in a planned program which brings visibility and awareness of the role of locally elected school officials to the citizenry of this Commonwealth. Thank you so much for your ongoing service and support. I get to say from my vantage point as a superintendent, no one really understands the complexities of this role until you sit in this seat. We are in some very interesting times in education, and strong leadership is a necessity. And I publicly want to say thank you for your ongoing commitment and your passion and purpose for our children. So continue the great work. Thank you so much. As President Klein said in the opening moments of the meeting, we have two outstanding presentations this evening. Before we move into those presentations, I would like to communicate that we had an Ask the Superintendent's forum yesterday where we had several participants who gave up their Sunday to engage in conversations with me and ask questions around many of the workings of what's happening in the school system. I believe that it's valuable for me to communicate these three areas that came up as paramount topics during the discussion. One was we were engaging in discussions around the lights on Arnold Field and the fields at Black Rock Middle School. And the tenor and what we were talking about in regards to that discussion is how the discussions have been those that have been very tasteful in regards to what can we do, what are the best options for us to be able to provide these facilities and these resources for our children. Second, one very large issue that we spoke about was addressing COVID-19 and more so the Omicron variant. And I have to say thank you to the parents and the students and community for being flexible and collaborative and very supportive of the many changes that we had to make last week. I have to say wholeheartedly, and coming from the superintendent's office throughout and moving throughout the system, we are committed to having our doors open for our students. When we have to make changes, I wanted to provide a little bit of background information, as I did yesterday with Ask the Superintendent. We have to look at how can we open schools while having an appropriate amount of staff. How do we get students to school? Our bus drivers are our staff. How do we have our facilities are able to maintain our clean facilities and continually have them clean during this pandemic with our custodial staff? And of course, our teachers and instructional staff, counselors, nurses, etc. When we look at these numbers, we assess these numbers in regards to who may announce that they may be absent the next day because of illness or some other reason in the afternoon. A follow-up meeting happens with information flowing through the administrative team as early as 4 a.m. in the morning. So this morning, we were up at 3:39 this morning looking at data of the numbers to see if we can open our doors and run our programs effectively. With that said, as the CDC, the Montgomery Office of Public Health and also Children's Hospital of Philadelphia has put out a lot of recommendations. And I mean, there are a lot of roads and a lot of information and data to follow. One thing that has come out, what has come out on the same accord is that they do agree that schools should be open. If we have these measures in place and we are continually tracking the data and making sure that we can run effectively, especially from an operational standpoint, again, we are committed to keeping our doors open. So thank you so much for your flexibility and collaboration as we continue to work through these pits and valleys in regards to trying to stay in front of addressing the pandemic in our schools. Third topic, which created some discussion, was what's on the agenda this evening in regards to K-4 scheduling and also the grades 5 through 8 update. And it was a discussion around the thematic programming. And I wanted to make sure that I came out in public because I told a few participants in the meeting yesterday, I said, I'm not quite sure of that answer. I'll get back to you, and I think tonight it's appropriate to do this before the presentations begin. In regards to the thematic programming and looking at the recommendation for interdisciplinary programming, there is a sense that there's a loss, that the thematic programming is gone, and what's going to happen to our staff, that our incredible staff that lead these activities and things of that nature. And what we are working on now, as you'll hear this evening in regards to the presentation, are thematic teachers. Yes, we're moving to interdisciplinary options for all children, which is a positive. In regards to our expertise that we have with our educators who are leading the thematic programming, we will seek to work with them as leaders in this space to be able to provide us with information and professional development and support to further enhance our interdisciplinary program options. You'll hear that this evening, but that wasn't an answer that I was able to present with Ask the Superintendent yesterday. So I wanted to make sure I came back before you with some authenticity and transparency, letting you know where we are headed in regards to further developing this plan. So with that said, if there aren't any questions, we can move right into the presentations.
Right, so our first presentation tonight is our K-4 scheduling update. It's going to be, I believe, Dr. Gaudioso and Dr. Albanese. Mr. Bernadowitz is on Zoom as a panelist, but he is at home, as you know, other people are in the district, and so we sent him home right after the presentation, as a matter of fact. And so he is joining us, but I think that primarily we'll have Dr. Gaudioso and Dr. Albanese speaking tonight. So I'll turn it over to you.
So let me first say thank you very much for your service. We can only do what we do because of your support. So thank you for all you do for our schools and our students and our community. So I'm here to share an update on the K-4 reimagination. And let me just say this has been incredibly exciting work. When we think of the reconfiguration of schools, Lower Merion did not take this as just an opportunity to de-densify, to decrowd schools. We really looked at this as a way to reimagine what K-4 and 5-8 education could be going into the future. This vision and this work was guided by our strategic plan. And as part of that, we worked thoughtfully with our committee, our K-4 team, to develop a vision unique to K-4 education. Recognizing this is a foundational experience for students, this is a time where experiences and student wonder and curiosity drive learning, and we really wanted to create a vision and a mission statement that guided the uniqueness of the K-4 experience. So you can see here the vision, some of the key words and key themes that resonated for our committee. And this committee included teachers across grade levels, across special areas, special education, and included parents. The commitments were to some cohesive learning communities, innovative real-world critical thinking, helping students persevere in a changing world, helping them to develop independence, be social learners, value themselves and the diversity of others. When we envisioned what we want a fourth grader, for example, leaving a K-4 experience to embody, we had to ask ourselves, well, this is what we would like our fourth graders as they leave us to have as a foundation for their own experience and for their own identity. What is the program that we have to put in place to support that? And that's what drove the creation of this mission statement. So the idea of our team and our program and going forward, the design of instruction is to create impactful and authentic learning experiences, to advance student growth, wonder, ownership, cultivate positive dispositions, and you'll see this in the habits of mind that now are part of the elementary report card, looking at experiences that enrich students across personal, social, academic lines, and really develop a sense of global connection and belonging. To work toward that vision and that mission, we had 4 subgroups that started the work. The first one was a reimagined design or approach for learning. This group focused to some degree on schedule, but they're also going to be looking at environment and approaches. We had a transformative curriculum group that is looking at intersecting with the strategic plan and really trying to break down walls between subject areas, create interdisciplinary experiences, build in student voice and choice, anchor in multiple pathways to success. Social emotional learning, so that we're looking at students as they grow and develop, but also looking at areas like these positive dispositions or habits of mind, looking at executive function, how is that embedded in student experiences so that it can be taught and owned. Cultural proficiency, how are we developing students who are part of diverse communities and a changing world? And then our Equity, Access, and Intervention Committee was really tied to a few district goals. The district equity goals that are tied across multiple layers in our district. Additionally, we were looking at our intervention programs, and one of the recommendations that emerged from that group was recommendation for an MTSS, or multi-tiered system of support framework, to help us achieve goals of meeting each student where they are and supporting growth for all students. So these were the key groups that led to recommendations for the K-4 program. The first group is the one that is anchoring tonight's update. That group kind of had to be a thinking partner and be embedded across all of these groups so they could hear what are the priorities and what are the must-haves of these groups, so that as we start to design a school day and we start to make recommendations for both instructional minutes that encapsulate subject areas, but also look for opportunities where we can break the lines and blur the lines between subject areas, this group really had the challenge of being all ears. So this recommendation is important to unpack a little bit. MTSS, this is a K-12 recommendation. And when we presented to the board on this before, what we had shared was that this emerged across various groups within the district. It emerged out of subgroups in the K-4 and the 5-8 committee related to intervention, access, and equity. It also emerged as a recommendation after our special education evaluation to improve our regular education systems of support. It also emerged as part of our achievement teamwork, and that was some work that was ongoing with Dr. Christina Paul for a couple years, looking at interventions and supports. So what's worth noticing here is that this is anchored in teams and shared responsibility, where we become a community that is effective using data, differentiated pathways, and supports so that all students get what they need. We are aligning these pathways and these differentiated supports in team-based ways that really are reliant on data and collaboration. Of course, this has schedule implications, because when we're going to be making team-based data decisions, we need space as part of our structure for those teams. We had 3 new subgroups. All of a sudden I had a picture of subgroups. So 3 new subgroups that started this year, special areas. Our special areas team really was looking carefully at a shared vision for what interdisciplinary learning could look like. We're talking about STEM a lot. There are opportunities here we can grow into STEAM. We can also include our special area teachers with this interdisciplinary problem-based learning that is a recommendation of our K-4 program. We also want to break down the silos where special areas, the arts, are programs that are separate from core, and we really want to look at opportunities to integrate and to bring special area teachers closer into a core collaboration team. And one of the recommendations we had was to explore a STEM special and fit a STEM special into the rotation, special area rotation for students in grades 1 through 4. School culture and community group. We're looking at all of those things that make our communities rich and vibrant, and this group has just started, and we're bringing some additional parents into each of these groups starting in the next few weeks. And our K-12 World Language group, that's beyond the K-4 group. It's encompassing K-12 because it was looking at long-term outcomes of the entire World Language program. And the decision there, the recommendation was to concentrate the elementary world language experiences in 5th grade so that students had an immersive experience, stronger program outcomes, and one recommendation that has an impact in K-4 is for an exploratory experiences that would give students opportunities to get to know what is available, and they can help make have greater choice when they move into 5th grade. So those are the groups that have been working and collaborating, and at this point, we've been talking about what our program could look like. Where we are now is between schedule, staffing, and trying to start looking at what does it look like to bring this to reality. So we're between these 2 points. We have, at this time, about 52 on our K-4 team, and that represents a lot of new folks. New teachers, we've brought in a lot more special area folks. Some of them are in a special area subgroup. Others are combined with the scheduling group. and occasionally we put the two groups together. And that's important because as we're starting to look at that final block there, which is reality, we have to get lots of perspectives and lots of ideas and really just try to design the most optimal experiences for our students. So as exciting as all the recommendations are, in terms of aligning with the strategic plan and really positioning us to grow by leaps and bounds in the next three to 5 years, what we recognized is that if we want to achieve all of these things, we are going to have to dream differently and do differently when it comes to the schedule. So when we consider the reimagined design for learning, we need a shell that starts us out, meets us where we are for this upcoming school year, but also has the capacity to break down the walls and give us flexible blocks of time so that we can be interdisciplinary. And it has to include ways that we can really engage teachers with interdisciplinary activities and learning. So that's something we're going to grow into over the next 3 to 5 years. We've conducted site visits, and during some of those site visits, we've had some really rich opportunities to see ways that schools have integrated the arts into those interdisciplinary experiences, ways that schools have integrated STEM leaders into supporting and anchoring the problem-based learning in schools. So there's a lot that's very exciting, but the critical piece of it is really starting to get that shell of a schedule together that's going to grow with us as we grow into these practices. Additionally, with our social emotional learning, you'll see we've dedicated, committed to continuing morning meetings and align the times across the district, and also really looking at our equity, access, and intervention, and really being thoughtful with ensuring access to a strong, robust core curriculum program. Additionally, looking at our intervention programs and making sure that our instructional minutes align to the program recommendations both for core and interventions. Now, as you can imagine, that's no easy feat because we have all of these priorities are competing for time allocations within a school day, which has a set number of minutes. So while we know that we have constraints, we also know that it's going to take PD planning and curriculum development to get where we want to be at the end of 3 to 5 years. So this really needs to be a program, an instructional design that is flexible and moves with us. And it requires us to continually return to the vision for improving student experiences in both the short and the long term. So while we're looking at, we know we have to dream and do differently to achieve something different, how do we get there in a gradual way that supports students as we grow? So to help us with the consideration of what the day could look like, we brought in a consultant, Michael Reddick, who also worked with the secondary, the 5 to 8 group. And he came and worked with our entire K-4 team, our scheduling committee. We invited teachers from beyond. We invited some of our parents. We had some turnover in our parents who participated in last year to this year. So we're going to take our recommendations back to some parents who have worked with us and then to our new parents. One of the things that was really critical about this consultation was that the recommendations of each of the subgroups and the must-haves for program recommendations were brought forward to our consultant, who helped work with us to, here's how you could do it, knowing that you have constraints, and as he was fond of saying, you can have anything you want, you just can't have everything. So trying to figure out what is achievable within this schedule was something he helped us work with. And from here, we're at the point where, his last time with us was November 30th. We spent the first couple weeks in December working on the schedule. All 6 principals came together to try to put it together and really make it real. And then we brought it back to the scheduling team and then to the whole K-4 team at large. We're sharing this with you now. And from here, we're going to continue to partner with teachers and refine and listen and keep trying to really make it the best possible mixture of practices that achieve the goals we've set. A couple things that we maintained were the 15 minutes dedicated physical activity time. Originally, one of the things that our consultant shared was that the ELA time was lean relative to the length of school day and that the special area periods were longer relative to the school day. and he felt that some, improvements could maximize student access to those opportunities during intervention times. One of the challenges we have during intervention times is a lot of services and a lot of supports for students are competing for those same windows of time. So one of the things that we wanted to do is expand opportunities for students to get what they need, what we call win time, what I need time, so that we could grow into practices like a talent development program, like having students who are getting multiple layers of services not have to be pulled out of core because we've run out of intervention windows of time. So those were some of the things we were hoping to achieve through the schedule, and he worked with us in a variety of ways. And I'm going to share at this time, Dr. Albanese is going to go through some of those recommendations. And again, what we want to emphasize is these are recommended minutes at this point, proposed minutes, because this enabled us to do a lot of what we were proposing to do, and we'll continue to work with teachers and our special area teams to refine. So Dr. Albanese.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Toby, principal at Marion. Thanks for having me this evening. This exercise has been awesome for me as a relatively newer person to Lower Marion School District, because I learned quickly the strength of the staff, the passion, all the different groups that we've worked with. Dr. Gaudioso touched on all those various subcommittees. Not one of them would suggest that their work is not important. They're all very, very committed to doing great work. So it was quite an experience to sort of to bring in all that information, all of their recommendations, and then see how it fits into something like this, which is what you see of a shell of allocated minutes. And as Dr. Gaudioso talked about, there's only so many minutes in the school day. So going back and forth and having a healthy dialogue with various subcommittees, teachers in our individual buildings. When I say our, I'm referring to myself and the other 5 elementary principals. Just having some real honest discussions, because there has to be give and take. I'm not sure that we're in a place to be extending the school day at this time. I don't think that's on the table. So it's a matter of working within the allotted time we have, which actually is 395 minutes at the elementary level. You see 385, just some time built in for transitions, because it's impossible to be 2 places at once, as much as we all like to try. So what's reflected up there are the recommendations from the various subcommittees, and including Dr. Reddick, the consultant. You'll see an increase in the primary grade levels, English language arts, an increase in intermediate levels of math. Those are driven not just from recommendations, but from data as well. And as Dr. Gaudioso talked about, preservation of the PA time, that all important, physical activity, lunch and recess, we did not touch lunch and recess time allocations, 50 minutes in whole, that's 5-0, combination of lunch and recess. And then that another increase in time allocation was the WIN, which stands for what I need. And that's pretty much the highlight briefly of some of the changes in time allocations. So what does this all look like? How does this come together in the day, in a schedule? So this is just a shell. The top 2/3, moving down the first column, you see K through 4, and then moving from left to right, you'll see what each of those time allocations would or could look like in the shell of a schedule. You see the ELA, math, science, social studies, specials, WIN. RL is recess and lunch. And again, you'll see that going all the way down. MM, morning, meeting, consistent for everybody. That's also an increased allocation. It was 15, given the needs of our students' social and emotional well-being. It was pretty clear that we needed to reallocate some more resources to students and their social emotional needs. So that's reflected there. And then the bottom 2/3, basically, you'll see what it would look like for our specials area teachers. That's art, music, physical education, library, and now STEM. And then the WIN, that's the what I need block. In that block, a lot of the services live within that block. It could be both general education services and special education services, but also, more importantly, with this reimagined proposal, it's an opportunity for all students to truly have an opportunity to get really what they need without having to conflict with other competing resources. The next couple of slides just basically break this down by area. So here's the core content area. that I just displayed in the top third of that other chart. And then the bottom third, specialists, sort of where they live. So we're able to conceptualize what a day would look like for all of the folks in our buildings. At the end, and actually I shouldn't say at the end because we're not at the end yet, but once we're able to look at the time allocations and see what a day could look like, we needed to ask ourselves, did it work? Were we able to meet the recommendations of the various subcommittees and make sure the focus remained on student progress? Were we able to do that? What do we feel we were able to maintain and to move forward with this proposed schedule? You see the increase in core instructional time. Developmentally, kids need things. It doesn't always, for example, we learned that our younger learners, kindergarten, first grade, second grade even, struggling with phonics. That's the recognition of sounds, blended sounds, a simple letter recognition. We know that that's an area that we need to work on. And perhaps conversely, the intermediate level students, where they begin to, say, read to understand. They're beyond learning how to read, but then they're reading to learn things on their own and to understand things better. We notice there's a shift there and a need for increased math rigor, increased math time. So that's where some of those differences would come into play. The additional time for morning meeting to address social emotional needs, we're excited about finding that time. Also, discussions that we're having about not just dedicating morning meeting for social emotional work with students and children, but trying to find ways to embed that throughout the school day so it feels more natural and perhaps interdisciplinary. We're excited about the new special offering STEM that will live within the 5-day rotation along with library, physical education, art, and music. Something that we feel we're able to have done well. The interdisciplinary opportunities, so in order to make that happen, interdisciplinary opportunities most generally occur with larger blocks of time, flexible large blocks of time, and we were able to meet that need. What that means is just reducing the transitions, making the day a little less choppy for the students and the teachers, providing the professional staff with long enough time to bring the worlds of science and math together, perhaps in a more authentic way. Science and language arts, you name it. That's when we talk about interdisciplinary work, that's what we're referring to do, crossing over different disciplines and making it feel more like the real world, more authentic in those ways. And by creating larger blocks of time, we're able to provide teachers that opportunity. And also working really hard to find common planning time. Because in order to deliver those interdisciplinary units with success, or as by design, you have to provide the professionals time to come together and to plan meaningful lessons and enriching units together, which can be a challenge, but something that we worked very hard for. We also wanted to bring specials area teachers at the elementary level into the fold more. We didn't want them kind of feel like they're on an island in their own little world. In a more ideal world, they're more connected to the core content areas: math, science, English, social studies. The students would see their special area teachers not just as that one time during the day where they're sort of off of team or they're not in math or the English language arts. So we wanted to provide opportunities for the professionals in our building across multiple disciplines to come together to plan pretty exciting and enriching opportunities for our students. The things that we're excited about from the teacher's lens is the opportunities to bring them together, to bring, as I just touched on, the teachers have a common time, not just within grade level, but outside of content areas. So to be able to bring, like I said, the music teacher in with the fourth grade team to discuss where they might be able to enrich and enhance in a meaningful way. We're working really hard to find that time for them, but we're also working to create some time, and I think we think we've been able to do this, to have our content area teachers not just collaborate within the building, but across the district. And if we have at the elementary level common time within the day where all 6 elementary schools, let's say third grade has an opportunity to connect with the team at Marion has an opportunity to connect with the other 5 third grade teams, we're able to mull over data, talk about instructional strategies, look at something that maybe we could be doing differently. There could be something magical that's happening at Penn Valley. We might not have any idea. So to provide those teachers an opportunity to come together and talk and to share ideas, share challenges and solutions is invaluable. That's something that we believe we were able to make happen. A lot of the challenges that we faced are really because some things are just new. When you talk about project-based learning, that's going to be new, and that is a challenge, and it does require that common collaboration time that we've been harping on. What that will look like when and who will deliver those units or lessons, or even sometimes it's just 1 or 2 day mini units. You'll hear a lot about PBLs or project-based learning. So the challenge is creating a schedule that would support that. You've heard MTSS, that's going to be also new, and we're committed to doing that with fidelity. The benefits to MTSS are numerous, but to simplify it, it's just basically every single student is recognized, and every single student has their own unique set of challenges and strengths, and through MTSS and teachers coming together, mulling over data, looking at intervention strategies, sharing resources, pulling students into small groups, individuals, larger groups. Honestly, those things will be challenges as we roll them out, but Dr. Gaudioso sort of touched on it in a couple of those slides. It's not so much about the fall of 22, but perhaps the next 3 to 5 years, fall of 22, fall of 23, and moving forward, the time that it will take to roll these things out with fidelity. We need a vehicle, we need a structure that will allow that growth, and we feel with this schedule framework that we have that. The what I need time, there's a slide devoted to it, I believe, because the change was significant. We went from 30 minutes a day allocated to 60. And the purpose there was to make sure that we reduced some of those competing areas. Sometimes if a student were to be pulled for speech and language, or maybe they needed some time with the challenge or the enrichment gifted teacher, oftentimes the win time would be a time that would be more favorable perhaps to pull a student for those all-important services that they need to be successful. So when we do that, when we pull a student out of win, they're not only, we're pulling them out of working with their peers in a general education setting, we're also pulling them away from enhanced core instruction. So it's sort of enhanced math, enhanced English language arts. But again, sometimes you have to do those things to make it all fit and to make sure that all kids get the best shot. With the 2 30-minute periods, we're able to preserve one of those 30-minute blocks so those students will stay in their homeroom with their peers and get the instruction from their teacher who knows them arguably best within the school community, and really emphasize that whether it's individual or small group, truly what I need. And then the additional 30-minute block would be an opportunity for those other folks to come and reach their kids. Could be a special education teacher, could even be performance music, could be reading specialists or math specialists who provide general education support. So we feel that we've been able to do this, and in order to make MTSS work as it's designed, which is not easy, you need to have times like this within your school day to reach all students. And this only happens if the adults understand each and every student before them, if they understand what the data trends mean and what they don't mean, what those assessments are and what they are not, and really how to track students' growth and then come together and talk about it. It's all important, and this really is this win time will be the vehicle to move a lot of MTSS forward, so we needed to extend that time. The tensions are pretty much what we had just sort of talked about. Some of these new, finding the time to bring all these people who need to collaborate and make these important improvements. If you think about it this way, if you pull everybody to a common planning time, then who is working with the students? So that often creates a little bit of a conflict for administrators, teachers, is that idea that you want to get as many people to the table as you possibly can, but you also still need to be making sure that you're providing instruction all day long for students and meaningful activity. So that's a challenge, and that's something that we're still working on, and we feel that this framework is a step in the right direction. And again, as I talked about earlier, bringing people from across disciplines, across content areas, from across the school and district, to bring them together at the same time is again a challenge that we'll continue to work through. One of the most common time right now where we can bring, let's say, a grade level a group of grade level teachers together to come and talk about instruction and move things forward, look at some data, is when the kids go to specials. So if I'm a fourth grade teacher and my students go to art tomorrow, then at that time, all the fourth grade teachers, just in my building, would have an opportunity to come together. That would be their prep time. So they're not only planning for their individual preps and the students before them, but they're also trying to collaborate across the grade level with their peers and to build meaningful opportunities. One of the challenges that we face and we really can't control in any school district is enrollment. Enrollment is something that does fluctuate, and that it's sometimes we might joke about it. If our enrollment's spiking, I guess business is good. We must be doing something right. So when that happens, we need to adjust, and we need to adjust every single school year as enrollment just it's like a bouncy ball. So one of the challenges that we could be facing is if and when any section, so let's say a grade level, say fourth grade, we'll call that a section. If there's a school across the district that has more than 5 teachers, because their enrollment in that building could be such that you need more than 5 teachers, then we run the risk of not being able to have that common planning time for those teachers to come together and do all that work we've already talked about. So one of the options to address that would be to, let's say you take that 6th section. So if there are 6, you take 6 kids, could be 24 of them in there, and you take a few of them and you spread them across the other 5 sections. And the result, as you can see, is an increased class size across the special area. Could be 3, 4 students, could be 5 depending on the class size guideline and the enrollment that particular year. What that preserves is the opportunity for all those teachers to come together at the same time and to plan for those enriching lessons and to look at the data. If we didn't do that, and this is sort of a as-needed situation, this isn't something that you would aspire to do, but only by a necessity. So if we did need to do that, if we didn't do this, then we would run the risk of one random section having their special at an off time during the school day. So you could have 5 professionals have common planning time, and then the 6th, it's not going to align. So this is just one strategy to address that. And then if we have those schools that the enrollment might be such that there are 7 sections within a school grade, at that time we might be looking at bringing in itinerant support, which would be sort of a part-time specials person to keep those numbers far more manageable. So this is something that we're obviously keeping a close eye on, and it's one strategy to try to preserve those special times. Sometimes the kids, quite honestly, and you might hear it from your children at home or across the community, they would actually prefer an opportunity to be in specials with their friend from 2nd grade, but they're not, because we tend to pick the students up and we move them through their day by homeroom, and there's not a lot of opportunity for them to cross over. They even sit together at lunch and recess, they play together. So these are opportunities sometimes the kids look forward to. And so there is some silver linings to having this happen and spreading these kids out and give them access to more of their friends. This special area flex is both something that's new and exciting, but also a challenge. And I say a challenge again because it's new. We wouldn't quite know yet what this would look like, but in concept, and you can see there in that 3rd bullet. No, you can't, because it just went away.
It'll come right back.
But you'll see in the 3rd bullet all of the good things that we feel we could build into this special area flex, and it might be a 45 or 50-minute period at some point during the day where we reallocate staff to come together to work with students. And that would free then up other groups of staff to come and plan these PLCs, the learning, to plan the PBLs, the project-based learning. It would provide other groups of adults to come together and mull over data. It would provide the students opportunities to extend and enrich in a special area. So they might get a couple of days or a week or so of additional music or art, depending on the grade level. We don't quite know what this will look like, and that's one of our current challenges, quite frankly, is to dive into this special area flex, and that third bullet highlights the benefits to it. And this is a lot of it's connected to everything we talked about, MTSS, PBLs, bringing the special area folks together at the same time, at the same table or the same Zoom, and working with content area folks from across the district to provide some exciting things for students. Dr. Gaudioso?
So the idea of that flex block is something that, you know, we're looking at how do we keep things flexible, obviously, because we want to be able to make sure that interdisciplinary opportunities are possible. We want to make sure we have the opportunity to pull in special area teachers. Where their collaboration period could be movable depending on a schedule, that block becomes flexible at the start of the day and just gives us some opportunity so that they are more tied to what's happening in the classroom, more tied to some really exciting opportunities, I think in particular of the third grade residency. They go to the Barnes Foundation. We want to look at opportunities like that to grow and build those. One of the schools we went to see virtually had a rich partnership that included special area teachers. So that's something that, we worked with our consultant, developed our shell and our proposal, and our next step is pulling our special area team and our scheduling team together so that our special area reps are really going to be part of that visioning for what does this flex look like. So other options that we considered, really were how can we stay the same? But we really felt very strongly that the way to achieve the recommendations of the subgroups is we have to dream differently, we have to do differently, and what does that mean? So certainly the tensions of change are here, and if we keep specials as is, what are the gains, what are the challenges? If we keep 45-minute specials but don't reassign the homerooms, what's the gain, what's the loss? So this is what the team engaged in throughout. So this slide is really just to let you know that we considered a lot. And talked through with teachers, with the consultant, the principals, all 6 principals working together with supervisors. And these are things that they'll keep working through with the teachers as they get feedback and keep refining. But these are the tensions within the school day. So in terms of advancing district goals, we're excited because of the possibility here. We maintain the robust core programs, social emotional learning. We're growing into more interdisciplinary practices. We're going to have a more aligned and cohesive intervention program. Partly our data warehousing is changing, and with the collaboration, these teams, the team-based decision-making is crucial, and having that common rather than staggered preparation time is really an important part of that to support MTSS. And continuing with strong data practices that are used by teams to be collaborative problem solvers to support students. So our next steps, I think we've shared a lot of them. We're going to continue to collect feedback. We have teacher groups lined up next. We have parents who will be both joining us and invited to some focus groups. Our parents who worked with us last year, we're hoping will come back and give us some feedback on you were part of the vision creation. How did we do with some of our proposals? And we'll just be doing some of that special work with our new parents to orient them to the work and then go through with them as well. Principals will be sharing with their buildings, having more discussions with their staff and parents. And we're going to keep conducting site visits and researching and really working to refine the practices and the schedule so that it really is getting us where we want to be with supporting students toward this vision, which we're really excited about. Questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Gaudioso and Dr. Albanese. Very much appreciate the presentation. I'm going to open it up to the board for any questions. Ms. Kalish?
Thank you. I have two questions. One particularly because you hit a point about kindergarten, and anyone who comes to these meetings knows that kindergarten is my high horse that I frequently hop on. So I would just urge you and the committee to include consideration of what would need to change or what would need to be accommodated to be able to afford full-day kindergarten to all of our students. I understand that that's not something that we're prepared to do at this moment, but I think it'd be really valuable to have an idea of what the barriers to achieving that are, if that is a long-term goal for the district, beyond just myself. So that's that. And my other question was when Dr. Albanese was talking about our enrollment growth, I was just hoping that somebody, maybe anybody of our administrative representatives could give us an idea of if we have any of our enrollment projections for next year, and if we have an idea of whether enrollment may be at the same level, up or down.
We just approved an enrollment study last board meeting. It was recommended by the facilities committee.
Oh, so I should do my homework. My apologies.
And the study is scheduled for completion in March of 2022.
Great, thank you.
And for your kindergarten question, it is part of the conversation, the what if, but this team certainly is not making the determination. What I will say is they have been engaged in what does problem-based learning look like in kindergarten, and the idea that it's discovery-based and inquiry-based. So there's exciting conversation. Our kindergarten reps are involved.
I very much appreciate the ongoing focus on our youngest learners.
Absolutely.
Ms. Shurock?
Hi there, thanks so much. I just have a few questions.
Sure.
Oh, thanks, Shanna. Okay. So in the beginning, you named one of the tensions in thinking of the staffing implications for the scheduling model you're proposing. Just wanting to understand how, when and how you are going to address that, especially given we're entering the hiring timeline for teachers for the upcoming year to get our most competitive and diverse candidates. And a lot of the changes that you're proposing, I'm assuming, will require shifting of staff and or hiring new staff. So wondering how that's being addressed.
We actually had staffing meetings, I should say, prior to the winter break. So we've already taken a look at that. The proposal right there does not include new staff other than the STEM teachers. The STEM teachers ended up being a neutral because we had reductions in overall sections in elementary at the time that we were looking at it. And then the fifth grade, I think it was like 29 sections, it went down to 28. So it was a reallocation of staff rather than new. Now, it still might require some hiring, as we move various folks. And the instructional minutes there, we've looked at the allocation within the day, so we've had those conversations relative to budget.
Got it. And then a follow-up to that, am I understanding correctly that foreign language would be taken out of the elementary schools in place of STEAM and then moved to the exploratory in the fifth grade?
Right, the world language elementary concentration would now be in fifth grade. So students would have a more immersive, regular experience, which we're believing is going to support stronger program outcomes overall. But we also want to increase the choice that students have for their foreign language or their world language. It used to be your experience previously was whatever language was in your FLES program. So with this exploratory, students are going to have an opportunity to experience the different languages and then be part of the decision maker when it comes time to make a choice for fifth grade.
Got it. And I'll try to stop after this one.
That's okay.
But very much I understand the architecture and vision of a building is in your schedule and master roster. That being said, there takes a lot of professional development and coordination to actually deliver, especially on the WIM framework and the MTSS, the level of differentiation. What's the vision for who's managing those pieces across the professional learning communities?
That's a great question. We are working with an MTSS consultant right now. We are in year one. One of the previous presentations we did was on MTSS, and we're actually sharing tomorrow at ISC on MTSS. So we're looking at it again. I mean, it takes about 3 to 5 years to have your robust, effective MTSS system in place. We do have elements, certainly, of intervention and practices. We're putting in infrastructure this year that is related both to the data warehousing, data practices, and the team-based collaboration, back in the day, Dr. McGloin and I both, had previously put in like RTIs in our buildings, and your step one is your schedule. So really taking a look at this opportunity here to both reimagine toward, positioning us well for the strategic plan, but also looking at if we want to move into MTSS, step one is make sure your collaboration time for your teachers is there and that your intervention time separate from core so that students are not missing core. That needs to be part of step one. So those are things that we're making part of our conversation, and it's just exciting that it's happening at the intersection of a bunch of different district initiatives.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mr. Lee?
Thank you. First of all, this is, thank you. A lot of work went into this. It's really comprehensive. Just have I'm just trying to wrap my arms around it. I think a lot of the stuff you're talking about sounds great, but if you could go to the chart that shows the recommended minutes per day. So totally get, we can't change the total minutes per day. And, we're increasing WIN time, we're increasing literacy time, we're increasing math time. And I understand we're dropping FLES in elementary and, increasing language in middle school. But in order to support all these increases without changing the total minutes, I just want to understand. Oh, sorry, could you go back one more slide? No, the table?
This one?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Where are the extra minutes coming from? So we're increasing all these things, like what's being cut? Are there lines on here?
That's a great question. Yeah, special areas used to be 60 minutes. So we're looking at 45 minutes instead of 60 there, with the idea that, it's a win in one direction, in terms of core instructional minutes and our intervention time. Additionally, we're looking at how do we bring special areas into more integration opportunities with those flexible schedules. So that's the one area. The physical activity is staying. Math, previously, a few years back, had been 70 minutes. The program recommendations were higher. There's a spiral flex review that's part of the program. And I think when physical activity was put in, we ended up with, carving some time out of language arts and out of math. So we're trying to put the time back into core that used to be there. The what I need time was 30 minutes. We did have variability across some buildings and how long morning meeting was, how long win time was. So this is aligned across the 6 buildings. So am I missing anything, Dr. Albanese?
Science and social studies
Thank you.
also, depending on whether it's primary or intermediate, was a 5-minute reduction.
There you go. And the idea there is with the interdisciplinary work, we have opportunity to do more with content area reading, content area literacy. One of the things we were hoping to achieve is 120 minutes in the English language arts block, and 90 at the minimum, so that we've achieved that across each of the grade levels, but we're going to rely on the additional time through the content area reading interdisciplinary work throughout the other parts of instruction.
Okay.
Okay.
One more. For the specials, when you're faced with a situation where you have more than 5 sections and you're going to redistribute one, I'm just curious, why wouldn't you just redistribute all of them since you're in the process of doing that anyway? If you're going to take 6 sections down into 5, you could just mix all the kids.
We actually did talk about that, and that I would say that's not completely off the table. One of the things that the principals were talking through was, at placement, when you do your class placements, you're really thoughtful with, the balance of students, the supports for the students in the classroom, and where feasibility may be for having, let's say you have assistants who are attached to some students with behavioral needs. How far could resources be stretched to make the decisions that you have to make for placements? Might it be easier to take some kiddos who they have buddies in another classroom and at placement time, just put them with some friends, or some familiar faces? Is that the, still student-centered decision, but less disruptive? So that was,
Gotcha.
So it's, I wouldn't say it's off the table, but it was considered, and that was kind of the thinking there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ms. Sautner. Down to one because you got one for me. Thank you. So real quick question. So the great part of the rollout, like building that shell and then stretching it out over 3 to 5 years, whatever it is, that you can build it out. How are you going to measure not just within a school, but across schools too? Because sometimes there is great stuff happening. I think you said it, there's a great something happening here and not at this school, but it's hard to know.
Yeah.
Like who's getting it right. So what are some of the ways that you're gonna put in that measurement as you roll out?
So that's a really exciting question. I'll try to keep my answer small. Okay, so one of the things MTSS obviously is, we're going to have, with our new data warehousing tool, a much more transparent, easy way of looking at student progress both within and across programs. So we're going to get an easier view of exactly that question relative to intervention, enrichment, and so forth. So that's one piece of it. Another is, when we think about our STEM special, one of the things we learned during our site visits was how critical the right person is, somebody who's a leader, someone who in the special area PLC during their collaboration time can be a leader anchoring them to the problem-based learning, the inquiry work, because you want your students who are developing these inquiry questions and start to take the expedition journey, we're calling the PBLs expeditions, who start out on that journey, you want them to have these similarly rich experiences. One of the great assets we have is Nancy Acancia-Mesa, our STEM supervisor, is actually a professor at Acadia, and we have a partnership there. We have about 50 teachers who are STEM certified. So we have a wealth of in-house capacity for really thinking through what that could look like and how to design it, and they've had common experiences, and they're going to do a collaborative rating of these units, developing a prototype for the planning of them, so that some of those experiences across the buildings are really equitably experienced by all kids. So I think we're still going to have superstars, and that collaboration time is going to be something that's so critical to making sure that we grow as a whole system and not just in pockets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I have just a couple sort of follow-up or ending questions. One, I wanted to follow up on the parents on the committees, because I think that that's such an important and integral piece of everything that the district does, is to have parent involvement. And you had talked about, I know that about a year or so ago that there had been sort of a letter that went out asking for parent involvement. Is that, when you have additional committees, will you be doing the same process, or are you sort of using the people that might have been interested before but couldn't make it work for whatever reason?
I think a combination. So we had people who were able to commit sort of last year, and they attended, and I don't know if the going back to work changed people's schedules, less of the virtual. So we had some of our parents from last year didn't return this year. So we did outreach around the scheduling time, and a couple were just, I've taken on more at work, I just can't do it. So I'm hoping they'll come back and be a focus group. So that's the one sort of pathway. The other is, in the fall, we had put out a call for more parents and did get some who were interested. And, we've sent out invitations, and hopefully they're joining us this month. So they'll be sort of in on the conversation, but we still may want to do a focus group with them separate from just committee work. So those are a couple pathways, but I think also principals have lots of parent groups and parent opportunities. So we just talked as a principal team, as an elementary team, where are our opportunities for next steps and conversations with parents. In particular, we have that culture and community group that we really want to be richly partnering with. We also had a very cool conversation just about partnering with parents with just incredible backgrounds and careers, and coming in and not virtual field trips, but virtual visitors. So how can they be part of these PBLs and expeditions?
Great. Thank you. And I'm sure I could ask my question around professional development. I really appreciate the emphasis on the social emotional piece of things. That's something that is talked a lot about, and is clearly something that we need to work on, right? Like the impact of COVID on our students and their social emotional. So I'm really thrilled to see an increased focus on that, and some extra time put in as well, right? Really showing the desire to do more, and really focusing on that. Just one last question around just to clarify around the specials and the cases that it needs to be. So when we're talking about increased class size, that's really just for those specials, right? Because
Correct.
The district has worked really hard,
Correct.
especially during enrollment growth, to keep our class sizes down. So I just want to clarify that this isn't something that will result in larger classes across the board. It's just very specific to that one piece, and it provides opportunity for more professional collaboration among our teachers and staff.
Correct. And the numbers shown here, I just want to emphasize, are if classes are at max enrollment. So that's the worst case scenario, and most, when I looked back, and again, we are in COVID and some distancing, but when I look back, we're usually a little bit under. We certainly have pockets. Is that accurate? So that's worst case scenario, it would likely be less.
Right, and one of those
But
things
only
where
specials.
enrollment is different every single year, so.
Correct.
Right.
And principals will be thoughtful, with the familiar faces and experiences.
Thank you so much for the presentation and the time answering questions. I think we're ready to move on to our second presentation of the evening.
Well, as we're loading up, I'll just add in very quickly, as the common themes were rolling through the last presentation and we started talking about, the demographic studies and things of that nature, just to give an idea that these plans are aligned with the overall direction of the school system. So when we're talking about, like, there was a reference made in regards to professional development and how we will be able to assess the data across the buildings, that was approved last month in regards to extending the contract to have our information migrating from one system to another, which was the Illuminate contract. So that is the program that was discussed briefly. And also, again, the demographic study, those results, we're looking for them in March, which will help us solidify these numbers as we continually work through these plans. So, great job.
I appreciate you pointing that out, because you're also going to hear some themes. We have a really brief presentation for 5A this month. We'll be back to present our final schedule next month and all the new courses that go along with it, but we wanted to give you a brief update. But you'll hear some threads in our presentation that you heard in the K-4 presentation as well, because we really did use our strategic plan to take a look at how we can reimagine our system K-8. And so that's why you'll see that thread and that theme throughout. And every time we meet, we usually go through our mission and our vision, because that really has served as our North Star for the work that we've done, both at K-4 and 5A. And our missions and our visions look a little bit different, but they are based on our strategic plan in the school district. And so for us, we don't have our mission and vision up today, but we do have our mission, because it's important to just keep coming back to that, to talk about what we're looking for, which is building relationships, cultivating curiosity, developing intellectual independence are all really important for us, because middle school students, remember, that experience for them, it needs to be more than just about high school. They're really learning themselves at that point in their lives. And so the impact that we have to inspire our students and empower them to impact their communities is really important. And so that's a lot of the work that we've done to really guide what's happening. So you'll remember that we've been here a few times and we talked about the schedule, and we are 99.9% there with the schedule. We're pretty excited about that fact, that we really feel good about where we are with the schedule. I know that somebody asked about staffing before. It's really important to know what the schedule looks like to be able to staff appropriately. And so we feel really good about where we are. When we talked about it with you, we talked about the programmatic recommendations that our committee had, which included teaming, interdisciplinary learning, longer blocks of time for flexibility, that I&E period when they're calling it in elementary school, but it's the same conceptual thing. We call it I&E right now in our schedule, and that social emotional learning that we talked about being so important. And of course, we really had to push to get world language out of an exploratory period and to have it being offered every single day in grades 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so they were our programmatic recommendations. We also had scheduling priorities that we used to create that schedule. We tried to increase our core instructional time in science and social studies and in ELA and in math. It was important for us to have teaming, and within that team structure, we wanted to really acknowledge the difference between our younger students and our older students, and so we wanted an upper house and a lower house for our students, and the team sizes would be different. The intervention and enrichment block was important as well for scheduling. Social emotional wellness and equity was really important. It was an important thread throughout all of what we did, and of course, world language was important as well. So in the end, you see a train track, right? And we have our program and we have our schedule, and they're now coming together in the middle of that track. And then staffing kind of goes right in that centerpiece of it, which is what we just presented to our 5-8 committee, where that staffing piece is in there as well. So we're getting there, we're coming together, and that train track is really moving. So what we were able to actualize with our schedule that you'll see next month is that we have a use of teams that will create that personalized environment for our students. And it will foster both social, emotional, cultural, and physical and academic development. The teams are going to be the home base for students. There'll be a homeroom assigned for every single student in the schedule. Our teams are smaller in grades 5 and 6 with 2 teachers, and they're larger in grades 7 and 8 with 4 teachers. The 7th and 8th grade teams are neat because they actually have unified arts teachers integrated into them, which is pretty cool. The Bell schedule is flexible for time, space, and content and student grouping. And so we have those blocks of time. We could have extended programming and projects going on during that time. And it is really, even for us, a 3 to 5 year process. So we know that we're gonna open the doors, and it's not like poof, the magic happened and everything's done. We're gonna continue on our path and our journey, getting to exactly where we wanna be. But that flexibility was really important to make that happen. Additionally, we have a 40-minute I&E period every single day. You heard it's 60 in the elementary, it's 40 in our schedule. It's at the same time of the day for every single student in the building. That's the time that'll allow us to do both intervention and enrichment for students, do our SEL lessons, talk about clubs. We talked about we really want kids to have that experience of clubs every day, and so that's that piece for it, and it allows for team building. We are able to maintain our full continuum of scheduled supports, which was really important for us. And then in addition to that, we have the daily world language. So it's 30 minutes a day in grades 5 and 6. That's a dedicated time. And it's 45 minutes a day in grades 7 and 8. The neat thing about it is, start going into next year, and actually I was meeting with the world language department this week to say, how do we have our students learn about French, Latin, and Spanish, because 4th and 5th grade students both have to choose a language going into the middle school. So sooner than later, they're gonna have to pick a language. And so they have some really neat things that they're doing and working on to work with our students in the elementary level right now to make that happen. So students will be able to choose those. And the other thing that's built into that schedule that you'll see next month is an on-ramp and an off-ramp. So there's times for kids to decide, I don't like this language, I'm gonna go somewhere else. And so we built that into the schedule as well. Mrs. Stout's going to join me. Before I wanted to mention Dr. Albanese. I was looking at him as he was talking, thinking, I don't know if everybody recognizes, he's not only on the K-4 committee, he actually serves on our 5-8 committee. So he is super dedicated to the district, and I wanted to just recognize that and thank him, because we've actually even pulled him into meetings with just all of us and say, does this work? So thanks for that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Stout, as I recognize his super dedication.
Thank you. So hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Stout. I'm the principal at Black Rock Middle School, but tonight I'm here in the capacity of just representing the work of the 5-8 committee, which includes many folks, and you'll see a lot more of those when we're back next month. You know, we came to you, I think, in October with the idea of a schedule and wanting to create more flexible time and groupings. And I'm very happy with what we've come up with. We know that small learning communities foster stronger relationships, and they increase belonging. They give students a higher level of confidence at a time when they're most socially and emotionally vulnerable. And so we've created a structure that will capitalize on those small learning communities to create a portion of time throughout the day, a different amount of time in 5th and 6th grade, different amount of time in 7th and 8th grade, where students are working in small groups with consistent teachers to create that connected learning. And we know that when we're able to connect learning, it's more meaningful and relevant, and connected learning is what gives us that engagement, and that's what we want for the students. And so we really want this type of experience for everyone. So one of the things that we are discussing tonight is that a decision to transition away from the individual thematic programs that are offered to some students at the middle level to move towards more interdisciplinary experiences for all students at the middle level. In grades 5 and 6, which will be a lower house, you'll look at basically 2 homerooms linked together, right? So about 50 students, and that there will be thematic experiences woven together throughout the day. What that could look like is where 2 homerooms were linked together, you know, it could look like this. Teacher A teaches ELA, teacher B teaches math, and then we switch. And we're back together for advisory, that I&E time at the end of the day. And then there's a number of different ways we could do science and social studies. And we want the teachers to be thoughtful about doing that. There might be times where it makes sense to have both teachers co-teach the social studies. There might be times where one teacher teaches science, one teacher teaches social studies. So within the bracket, that's when the students would be together in grades 5 and 6. And then outside the bracket, students would be mixed with other students as they go to specials like music, PE, health, as they go to their world language, and then in 5th and 6th grade as they go to their other specials that they would have for consecutive days, like art, family consumer science, that sort of thing. In 7th and 8th grade, students will participate in 1 year of a humanities block and 1 year of a STEM block. And what that will look like is this. So you'll have a team of 100 students, the same as we have now, for 3 periods in a row, 3 45-minute periods, which is 135 minutes. Half the team will be participating in a STEM block, in which they will be with the same students together for math class, science class, and then a related special. So that could look like computer engineering. The other half will be in a humanities block, where they're doing ELA, social studies, and a related special, let's say art. And then they will still have their other 2 core subject classes on team, but not in a block. So the students who were in the STEM block in the morning will see the ELA and social studies teachers in the afternoon, and then the opposite happens with students in math and science. Outside of the block, just as is now off team, students would have world language or reading, depending on what their needs are, and they would be participating in year-long specials as well. So that's kind of the model we're going towards. We really believe this is extremely beneficial for all students. It creates opportunity for more choice. It's more engaging. It allows teachers to make decisions about the amount of time, right? It's not 45 minutes, the bell rings, and we have to move. We can continue to learn where we're learning. We know that it can be authentic. It can have more opportunity for real-world learning, and the research tells us this is what works. So it's the direction that we really want to move in. What it does mean is a change away from programs that have been extremely successful. They've been so successful, that's why we're modeling and copying many aspects of the programs and expanding it for all students. Presently, we have 2 programs at Ballackinwood right now, Evolve and Communique, and then 3 programs at Welsh Valley, Artifacts, Waterbound, and Viewpoints. Traditionally, the 6th and 7th grade programs have been very much lottery-based. There's usually more need or request than space, and so we have usually a lottery and a wait list. And then the 8th grade programs generally have not as much interest, but certainly the seats are full, especially with the Viewpoints program. The move in this direction allows all students to receive some of those benefits that these programs offer, which is the stronger relationships, the increased amount of time, the hands-on projects, and the connected learning. So it will be different because it's not, the same. In these programs, typically students are together through the vast majority of the day. So it is a shift, but we are lucky because we have years and years of experience about how to do this well. So as we think about professional learning, as we think about shifts related to it, talking with the teachers who have been doing this about how to help other teachers come on board with this, having them really demonstrate lessons that have worked, and lead teachers in learning to make that happen is the next steps that we will have. As we look at the key features of the student experience in grades 7 and 8, it's important to know the students will have 1 year of a STEM block and 1 year of humanities block. Whatever one they have in 7th grade, they'll have the opposite in 8th grade. That allows us to make sure that we're achieving some key content aims as in the specials area in particular. But it also allows a long enough amount of time that there's a true partnership. For example, in the STEM block, you would have the science teacher, the math teacher, and the computer science teacher together for 90 days with the same group of 50-some students. So it gets you like a 1-to-17 ratio. So it reduces student-teacher ratio, and those students are with the same teachers every day for those 3 blocks, but the teachers have common planning time together every single day. So you heard Dr. Albanese talk about that, the importance of that at the elementary. That's what's the difference between sort of, hey, we're 3 classes that maybe have some overlapping themes between we're truly interdisciplinary, when the teachers have the ability and time and space to meaningfully plan and they know their students really well. And so that's something that we've been able to achieve as well. Next steps related to this, I'm starting to meet with various home and school associations and review plans to get parent input and parent feedback. We'll be meeting with the groups of teachers. We did this in September. We'll be repeating it again. So every single grade level, every single elementary school, all of the specials teachers to solicit their feedback. That's when we'll be going over specific times with them so they can see the actual flow of the day, the people who live this every day to receive feedback related to it. Then we'll make any final modifications that we need to have, and then we'll be back next month with what, at that time, we'll be prepared to present a longer proposal similar to my K4 colleagues today. Okay?
Thank you so much, Mrs. Stout and Dr. McGloin for that presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions from the board. Mr. Moran?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation and definitely the thoroughness of it all. One question around the interdisciplinary blocks, and I appreciate that you're opening them up and allowing it expose it to all students. But one question is in terms of kind of the thematic views. So if there was a student that was really interested in, in the viewpoints of Waterbound, where they could kind of go in depth. So as you're opening that up for everyone, will there be opportunities for students who have a specific interest to go deeper in that subject, given the way that it's currently being approached?
I don't feel comfortable fully being able to answer that at this moment in time. The reason being, not that I won't be able to in the near future. I think we need very soon going to be able to understand who the teaching teams and who the teaching partnerships are going to be. I think once we understand that, that will help people begin to start wrap their head around where they're going to go and what that's going to look like. And so then I think that will open the doorway to better be able to answer that question. So if I could just ask to defer.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah.
Thank you. This all sounds great. I know, especially the expansion of the thematic programs. Both of my older two, neither of them got into Waterbound, and they were both disappointed. So I think this will be great. It's just a quick question. Just the 90-day segmentation of the blocks. Could you go to the slide that has the interdisciplinary block in grade 7 and 8 yet?
Here,
that
yes.
one, yeah. So is it going to be that schematic there is for 90 days? Like the kids are going to get 90 days of the STEM related special, and then the second 90 days of the school year, they're going to get, that block of kids will get the humanities related special? Is that how?
So no, the block itself will actually be by grade level, and we'll talk a little bit more next week as to next month as to why that would be. It has implications in terms of the way the classes would break down, and we want to keep those blocks being very heterogeneous in nature. And so we want students, one, to build relationships over the course of the full year, and two, it would have implications that might needing to reschedule mid-year, which could create less relationships than we would have. So our recommendation is that the students would remain in that block every student would have like a STEM block for 1 year and a humanities block for a second year, or reverse. What would change is the special that's associated with. So if you're in the humanities block, so when you're in the block with ELA and social studies, you would have a semester of ELA, social studies, and art, those 3 teachers with that group of children, and then a semester of ELA, social studies, and communications. And we'll talk about that class next week. And then with math and science, it's a little bit different. It'd be the full semester with computers, and then a quarter with family and consumer science, and a quarter with tech ed. And so that's how that would break down.
Okay. So some kids are going to get all humanities for 7th grade and then all STEM for 8th grade and vice versa.
Correct, but by the end of your 2-year experience, you will have experienced everything. And so that's part of the reason we're making a recommendation that it's not choice-based. We want everyone to have those experiences. The specials they have very defined curricula and standards like everybody else, so we need to ensure that that's achieved by everybody as it is now. But we didn't want it to be, 45 days or less, because we felt like that wouldn't be great for getting into the deep type of learning and projects that we know we want to achieve with this.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Jackmeister?
I'm wondering, one part I'm not concerned about, but I'd just like to understand how you're going to handle it, is that, like, my daughter got into Evolve in sixth grade, but was told she couldn't. They said, we don't recommend it for you because of her disability. She was living with a disability, and they said, you do not have the executive functioning skills to work in this type of environment. How are we going to handle that for kids who who can't work in that environment?
Yes, so I have to say, as somebody who worked very carefully doing special education transition for many years, right? When the blocks as they exist now are only some of your resources are allocated, right? And so it kind of operates in many ways as its own island, right? So there are times where the Evolve schedule is just a little bit different, or the alignment's a little bit different, and math wasn't as part of that team, right? So part of what we think we know we can achieve by expanding this is, since it's something that's available to everyone, we then have to program for everyone. Whereas in the other situation, we would try to program to the greatest extent that we could, but there'd be time when somebody might need, a certain learning support experience or a certain organizational experience that just didn't meld and merge. So that's actually, so two things you said in your statement that are really important. My child didn't get into an offering in a public school, and two, we weren't able to meet her needs, so those are two really key important reasons for why we want to expand this.
Right, yeah, exactly. And you actually, what you said kind of led me into my second question, was the fact that now every child that has, when we lean to the special education employment or challenge, currently some kids can overlap. One child needs one ISL, some child needs 3 ISLs. How do you accommodate, and will it look similarly to as it does now, or will that slightly change?
So I think that's going to be an answer that may evolve over time, right? So I think certainly in year one, we probably want to know what works and look to put that in. So my two colleagues that are my scheduling colleagues, Joe Devine and Christine Fleming, what we've done is we've taken a number of student schedules, and we said, okay, what would it look like in this situation? How would we kind of create this amount of programming in this schedule? And so we have situations for how that arise. I think as we live in the program, and I'll talk a little bit about this next month, I think there are places where we could see other opportunities present itself for programs, for services to be delivered differently. For example, I believe this block does open itself to more push-in type support, as opposed to always having to say you need to have a separately scheduled ISL. For some children, that might be beneficial. I believe some things we're going to talk about related to intervention and enrichment time, I&E time, I believe that it will allow us to be more systematic in some supports at that time as well. So we'll go into that, and I'll give you some scenarios when we go through our longer presentation next month, but know that as a group, I think we sort of have what could it look like year one, and then as everyone gets used to it and feeling better about this, what are some areas for expansion?
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Kalish?
Thank you. I had two questions. One is a follow-up on Mr. Lee's. I feel like I've heard versions of this presentation so many times, I've actually managed to confuse myself. So I just want to try and get some clarity here. When we're talking about a STEM block versus a humanities block, we're not saying child A in 7th grade is only getting science and math and the related elective and will not have ELA and social studies instruction. We're saying they will have those two, they'll have the two core subjects, and their associated elective time will be part of the interdisciplinary block. And then the following year, they will have the opposite program.
But they will, so if I'm in the STEM block, I will have math and science. Let's say it's the morning, right? In the morning, I will have math and science and computer science. And then in the afternoon, I'll have ELA and social studies. But my teacher for ELA and social studies will be the same teacher that's on my team with the other half. So let's get more fancy, right? These things are happening at the same time. So there's nothing to say that these two groups of people couldn't come together for a common speaker. It's not to say that they couldn't have some overlap. The STEM, the math and science, all of these teachers have common planning time, right? And then they'll actually know the students. Another feature we're excited about is getting to know students in different ways. You know, that some teachers will know students within that block experience, but some will see them in a more traditional setting. And so, but those teachers will all have an opportunity to meet and collaborate with one another on a daily basis. They'll physically live near one another in the building as well. So we think it gives benefits of both experiences.
Okay, I appreciate that offers a whole lot of clarity, and I was looking at that trying to feel like I should have brought my 4-year-olds like toys so I could have mapped out when you're having which subject, but.
And I also want to add that I've been living, breathing, and sleeping this since July. So there's many times I don't make sense anymore, and Dr. McGloin's like, you gotta try it again, you're not speaking in English anymore. So
I swear to you, I understood it until Peter asked his question, and then I just went down the rabbit hole. And
I completely understand.
I think I'm back with
Yep.
you. My other question, I think, will be much more brief, and I was just hoping either you or Dr. McGloin could address the staffing concerns that will be associated with going from offering a single language in a school to offering 3 languages in a school.
We actually feel like that's a staffing neutral. It's going to be a staffing neutral proposal. The whole proposal itself is not staffing neutral. I want to be very clear that, you know, when you shift to 3 buildings from 2 buildings and you put in 5th grade, that goes from 5 electives to 8 electives because that's the structure of middle school. It's not a staffing neutral proposal, but we've been trying to be as tight as we could, but still keep the program and the structure that we're proposing. From the world language perspective though, because remember we are transitioning less in some regards, other than we're going to do the exploratory 4th grade, but we had it in lower grades as well. It actually ends up being a staffing neutral proposal, we believe.
Oh, so we would be moving some from the elementary level up. Will some teachers then have to change the language of instruction?
Well, they can only instruct in the content area they're certified in. So
Right.
you have to be certified as either a Spanish teacher, a French teacher, or a Latin
So I
teacher.
assume we're going to have to hire more Latin teachers?
Not necessarily. We actually don't believe we will. We don't believe we will. But we haven't done course enrollment yet. That's the one caveat I want to put out there. We believe, just based on our current enrollments in Latin, that we should be okay. That's our belief at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yep, Ms. Sautner. I'll try to be brief, but it actually, I think might be guided towards you. So I'm so excited. I sat in a room with 200 parents for Waterbound, and once and this is years ago, one of the parents said, if this is the best way to teach, why aren't we doing it for all the kids? So awesome, thank you, both levels. It was fantastic. You met her needs and her request. That makes me want to say, once this is up and running in full swing and you're living it and it's working, can we measure before and after? To say, look, we did it. Not just the field is doing this, but Lower Merion is doing this great work. And we watched these changes, we watched these improvements, and we've learned these lessons to reflect back out into the larger world and community and be that leader that we are.
I think that's really important, as a matter of fact. So what we need to do to make that happen is to establish our parameters that we're going to use from before and after to see what we're looking for, because it shouldn't only be about academic achievement. That's the easiest thing for us to be able to say we can measure, you know, how did students do academically before and after, but it's also about social and emotional wellness, connectivity to the school, and a lot of other factors. So I think that that's really important for us to be able to show that we're able to achieve that. And so just establishing what those parameters are to begin with, and then doing, you know, you have to give it 3 to 5 years, though. You can't do it, like, don't ask me to come back in a year and say, wow, look at all these results. Because we'll probably hopefully have some to say this is great, but in 3 years, we want to be like, wow, look what we're able to show you that we've accomplished. And in 5 years, we want to knock it out of the park. So I think that's really important whenever you put some kind of new program in place, that you're measuring the before and after effects. It's just deciding what are going to be our parameters for that. Yep.
Great, thank you. I'm going to follow up on what you just said, Ms. Sautner, because we have had many years, of a lot of parent requests for more interdisciplinary programming. So I think it's really great that this is an opportunity to do that and to take the experience and the knowledge that our teachers have in this type of teaching and really be able to broaden that to more students. I think it's really great. And I think it really does address that ever-present request or desire to have more of this type of programming. And some of these questions, I have a couple of little questions, and if they're too specific, if they're better asked next time, just let me know. In terms of how many interdisciplinary blocks will there be per grade? Is it I mean, are there going to be basically 4 teams per grade then?
Depends on the school. So
Depends
if
on
you
the
think
school.
about a team having 4 teachers, that's approximately 100 students in 7th and 8th grade specifically I'm talking about, right?
Okay.
So it's approximately 100 students per team. Our two currently existing middle schools, BEC and Welsh Valley, are going to go down in size to around 800 students, I'm giving you a roundabout, right? And then our new school, Black Rock, is going to be more like our current middle school structure looks like 1,000 students. So we're anticipating 2 teams per grade level in 7th and 8th grade at the 2 smaller middle schools and 3 teams at the bigger school. Does that make sense? 5th and 6th is a little different because remember, we're doing teams of about 50 students, right? 2 homerooms as Sarah had mentioned. And so that just looks different. And that's not actually equal across the 3 schools because when you're dividing by 50, it just looks a little bit different. And so that, but you could kind of get the idea that it might be like 8. I think we have 9 at one school and then Sarah has about 10 or 12. It really just depends on the enrollment of the school.
Great, thank you. And then I guess my second question then, at one of the previous presentations, Mr. Hall was here talking about the program that you were using or piloting for the intervention and for the advisory time that sort of connected kids. And I'm curious how that is working, if that's still something that we're going to move forward with, that you're finding very positive. And if that's better answered next time, that's fine. I just was curious about that.
Actually, I would love for him to answer that next time. We are still using it, efficiency it's called. And I know he feels it's really made an impact and he feels a lot of success with it, but I feel like he would be the best person to answer that. So let's table that one to next month for him.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other? Great, well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Quickly, before we go to public comment, we do have a part of our agenda now that's for every meeting about whether or not we're going to approve additional agenda items. I think you know that we need to be providing all of our agenda items 24 hours in advance of the meeting, so we generally do on Friday. We have no additional agenda items, so I just wanted to point out why it's on the agenda and sort of go through the process of that. So next, we are at the point for audience recognition. At this time, Mrs. LaPera will open the chat feature, and you'll see a 10-minute timer appear on your screen. You can submit your comments and or questions via the chat feature. Please be sure to begin your comment with your full name and where you reside within the district. Again, it can just be a neighborhood. It doesn't need to be as specific as a street. And that's important in order for your comment to be shared. Mrs. LaPera, do we have any in-person comments for tonight's meeting?
Yes, we have Ms. Jenkins, and then we have Mr. Willis. Ready? Got the timer on? Okay. Hurry up. Ruth Jenkins in Moonwood. I'd like to thank you, Superintendent, for your Ask the Superintendent Sunday afternoon. I didn't get a chance to speak, but I did send in my comment, which was my concern with the number of students in the classroom. You indicated, there are 22, but we might, if we need 5, they'll stick them in and this and that. And so we all know that smaller classes are better for learning, and also with COVID, we really need to keep the students a little bit apart from each other, and I think we need to reconsider saving a classroom by putting 5 extra students in this room or 4 extra students in that room. The other thing I was concerned about was there was no equity meeting this month, and I know that it's Martin Luther King. Is there an equity meeting? Because I didn't see it on the calendar.
The equity meetings are every other month on the 4th Wednesday.
Yeah, the 4th Wednesday. Is it in there now?
Yep. It's possible right now the website is still down, so if you're looking in the last week or so, we're still, the host of our website hasn't gotten our website back up, so a lot of there are some missing pieces to it. I found a couple of weird things in the calendar as well. So it's possible, but yes, it will
Okay.
be.
And
Oh,
is it
hold
going
on,
to
sorry.
be, is it going to be Zoomed, or is it going to be like we have had in the past? I mean, coming in here?
They're still in person right now. That is a consideration that we are taking under advisement in terms of whether or not we can revert that back to Zoom.
Okay, well, you know how well that Meet the Superintendent worked with everybody participating. It's the same with the equity meeting, you excluding the community from participating. I have only 1 minute. Okay. Is voter registration for high school seniors part of the curriculum? Is it something that the social studies teachers can do to get the students registered for voting in their senior year in high school if they are 18 years old? The other thing I just want to quickly say that, you know, these presentations are very interesting, but they are abstracts. They are techniques. I would like to see a presentation with some substance, what the curriculum looks like, what we're actually teaching in these different classes. And one last thing I just want to say, as a long-term 8th grade teacher, I integrated music and art into my social studies program. So we did illuminated manuscripts, and we did, you know, songwriting and that kind of thing. I have no time remaining. I take my leave. Thank you.
Ms. Jenkins, I was just going to say that there is an ad hoc committee meeting on February 23rd.
They're every other month.
Oh, every other.
They're every other month at this point, so the next one is February 23rd.
Thank you.
Mr. Willis?
Well, as Mr. Willis makes his way to the podium, I would like to say thank you. Points well taken. As we've been talking about the ad hoc committee meetings, yes, we are exploring that virtual option. And yesterday, during the Ask the Superintendent, when we were talking about the numbers with class size, that was the premise behind having the numbers presented, as those were broad estimates in the event, worst case scenarios. So we wanted to make sure we clarified that this evening. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to address the voter registration?
John Willis, longtime resident of North Ardmore. Transparency, we've been talking a lot about transparency during the election. It was a big part of your, Dr. Moomin's, policy objective that we read about. To further that, could you please ask speakers to identify themselves, what their role is, their title is, because while I'm sitting there, I'm getting many, many text messages from people, who is this person? What role does that person have? Second thing is, there are a lot of people who are not professional educators, not professional administrators, who are stakeholders, very important stakeholders, residents, taxpayers, who are listening to all of these speeches. But we hear all these abbreviations, and people are texting me, what does that mean? What is SSI or ISS? So I think if you identify it once, or maybe a couple of times, so people understand what is being talked about, you will foster that transparency, which is so important, which we all want. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and points well taken. In regards to, that's very simplistic, we'll announce who approaches the podium when we're doing presentations. And we chuckled about this, I think, a couple of meetings ago in regards to, you know, this space, that's the new word now, in regards to education. We are a profession filled with acronyms, and that was something that we were talking about at the board level and also administratively. So yes, points well taken. We'll be able to put some context clues and clarify what the acronyms mean. Thank you.
I just want to, with respect to the voter registration, our students have historically, at least for the last 4 to 5 years, every year run their own voter registration drives. It's something that is sort of organic at each of the high schools, and that they've been doing that on their own. I think it's a really great way that our students are getting involved in the community and encouraging their fellow students to get involved sort of in a civic manner. So I think it's really great that it is something that's organic and that they're doing themselves as opposed to adults coming in and doing it for them.
Okay, that is all the in-person comments that we have, but we have some on the chat if you want Ms. Buckman to start.
I think it's fine to start.
Okay, the chat's open for another 2 minutes and 10 seconds. I'm Amy Buckman, the Director of School and Community Relations, to introduce myself. The first comment we have is from Amy Mack of Penwyn. She says, I would like to advocate for rising Penwyn catchment area 8th graders to have a choice about where they attend middle school. Due to the unimaginable disruptions to their middle school experience thus far, I think that the district should support their mental health by providing predictability and continuity during their last year before the expected transition to high school the following year. The next comment is from Stacy Olitsky of Narberth, posting the comments from Girl Scout Cadet Troop 73-259. It is unnecessary to cut down the mature trees at 1800 Montgomery and 1835 County Line Road if there are other playing field spaces that could be possible. We understand that if there are no field spaces, kids do need a place to play. However, all other options should be considered before cutting down trees. The trees are important and they're habitats for animals. The next statement is from Alexis Adorno of Ardmore. Is there a possibility that students from Penwyn Elementary School going into 8th grade will be allowed to stay at Bala Cynwyd Middle School if they choose? Seems unfair as they have had a very tumultuous middle school experience. The next comment is from Paula Schneider of Wynwood. Are the specials classrooms big enough to accommodate additional students in the greater than 5 groups? How do the teachers feel about this? How this changes class lessons? The next comment is from Christina Chang of Penn Valley. I appreciate all that the school district has done to try to keep schools open and in person. Sunday's Ask the Superintendent session was excellently well run and had over 100 Zoom participants. The format allowed parents to come on screen to speak directly on camera or submit chat comments. Could we consider this format for board meetings and board committee meetings? The chat time has just ended. The next question, oh, my screen just moved over, okay. The next question is from Maya Mearson of Wynwood. Why can't thematic programs exist along with the new curriculum? It sounds that the thematic and project-based elements will be lost otherwise. What happens with STEM and humanities blocks next year for students entering 8th grade? The next comment is from Jamie Mogul of Haverford, President of the League of Women Voters of Lower Merion and Narberth. Thank you for your time. I know you are dealing with many concerns right now, but wanted to point your attention to the proposed legislative redistricting happening now. We only have until January 18th to make comments to the commission. Every 10 years, our state legislative maps are redrawn after the census. Please make sure to tell the commission, do not unfairly divide our community again. We are currently divided into 4 districts, and the proposed maps, again unfairly, cracks our school district and community, the fastest growing school district, and will continue to grow for the next 10 years. Please tell the commission at www.redistricting.state.pa.us/comment/. And for more information, go to fairdistrictspa.com. Well, that's a little easier to say. This is an issue you should speak on, as this is our only chance for the next decade. Thank you. The next comment is from Peter Bittinger of Marion Station. I am a parent of a 9th grader at Lower Merion High School and a proud resident of Lower Merion Township. I want to voice my concern about removal of the old growth forest at 1835 County Line. Specifically, I'm concerned about the 4,000 plus tons of carbon that will be released by the deforestation and I'm also disturbed about the loss of crucial habitat for native birds and animals. I am not understanding how the township has come to the decision that this is the only possible way to support our students in their athletic endeavors. One of my students is an avid athlete. My family places great value on the role athletics can play in our lives. However, we are convinced that Lower Merion can do better. If this great school district cannot be a responsible steward of our local environment, then what hope do we or our children have when facing the climate emergency? Thank you. The next comment is from Michael Kovalchuk of Wynwood. Where does advanced math fit in the new middle school schedule? The next comment is from Daniel Shakovich of Haverford. I come from a multicultural family, and one of the reasons we chose Lower Merion is due to early language learning. As I'm sure the educators around the table know very well, there's a limited language window in the elementary school years. We're concerned that the elimination of the foreign language learning in the proposal is going to permanently diminish ours and other kids' learning foundations. This is not consistent with a broader emphasis on diversity and makes us question the coherency of the broader revamp. The second comment from Amy Mack, who commented earlier, I hope there will be time to address the parents' questions and comments about middle school related issues. The next comment is from Adrian Seltzer of Wynwood. Thank you for the great presentations. Might I suggest the chat opens when the timer starts and doesn't end early like at the last meeting? I was not able to submit my comments in the last meeting. It is very frustrating. Also, why is there no closed captions during this meeting? Now that COVID is very contagious, can we go back to being able to comment through Zoom during the committee meetings? Thank you. The next comment is from Marla Disson of Penn Valley. My daughter has French at Belmont Hills Middle School. If she chooses Spanish next year at Welsh Valley Middle School, will she be at a disadvantage versus those coming from Spanish elementary schools? Will this be problematic? Another comment from Adrian Seltzer, part 2, please do not read my comments at breakneck speed. Another comment from Ms. Seltzer, thank you, Amy, for your reading style. Comment from Michelle McGill of Ballackinwood. I just wanted to say thank you for all of the hard work over the last few months and years. I'm not sure when you guys sleep. You are much appreciated. And that concludes our chat for today.
Thank you so much for sharing those questions that came in online. A lot of questions there. I'm trying to compartmentalize them to be able to respond. I think one overarching question has to do with the transition of the elementary students to Black Rock Middle School. As stated or as discussed yesterday in the Ask the Superintendent forum, I said that I would get back to the parents and participants in regards to, looking back at how the decision was made. So I had a meeting today in regards to the presentations and the plans that led into the decisions for the students to move into Black Rock Middle School. Are we able to do that succinctly? Just to give a quick timeline of how these discussions transpired to where we are today, just very quickly for my team. And also, there are opportunities to discuss this. I know we had a couple of concerned parents who we've invited in for meetings around this issue, and that invitation is still open. So succinctly, can we just go through the timeline? Because as Ms. Salter has said earlier today, where we are now in a lot of this planning, from a visionary standpoint, I see this in 4 areas: assess, plan, implement, and evaluate. And so that's when you get to that ongoing evaluation, and you're going back to assess and plan, implement to keep this thing going with sustainability or having sustainable progress. Where we are now with the middle school plan, it's time for implementation. We went assess and plan. However, as we all know, I was not here for the assessment and planning, but I think it's valuable to restate how we got here to this point, to know that we're ready to move into implementation. So Dr. McGloin?
Well, so I arrived in the district, oh gosh, it's over a year, right? September of last school year. And the work had already started prior to my arrival, looking at all the scenarios. Actually, the Schaefer did a ton of work with a lot of committee members and constituents to look at all the different scenarios that were possible for the transition to happen to BlackRock. And so there was a variety of different scenarios that were presented. And I think it goes back, so last year was what, 2020, 2021? Probably what, 3 years prior to that, would you say, Mrs. Schaefer? 18-19 school year. So the work began in 18-19 to look at that transition, to see what it might look like, the staffing and cost implications associated with it as well, including transportation, classroom space. We have modular classrooms. I think everybody knows at several of our schools right now, so that is a cost for the district as well. And so we're talking years that in the making that the scenarios were all looked at. I arrived in September of last year, and the work was ongoing, and then the pandemic hit, and so we all we just stopped and had to deal with being at home and virtual learning. So when I arrived in September, we picked back up with the 5-8 committee and talked about what could the structure look like for a reimagined 5-8. And actually, Dr. Gaudioso at that time established a K-4 committee and talked about what could that reimagined education look like for that group as well. And we spent the year really talking about it from an operational standpoint of how might it operate, and an instructional standpoint of what is the program going to look like. In the end, we knew we needed to make a proposal to the school board, because we have to staff the buildings, we have to open the buildings, and we have to, depending on what we were gonna do, hire drivers, do a lot of different scenarios. And so I'm looking at the presentation day, and it looks to me like in May of 2021, we recommended a scenario to the school board, which was the scenario where all students moved together at once. We felt like it was the best scenario for the school district from both the operational perspective, financial perspective, and honestly, the student experience was really our driving force. The student experience, we felt like we were going to be able to give the students, creating that cohesive sense of community, and really creating that culture that was essential. That was really a big driving force behind it as well. And so we recommended at that point that all students move to the new middle school structure at once. We didn't transition it. And so that, I guess right around that time, the school board then said, yes, let's do that. We're moving everybody at once. We also recommended that we didn't give the option to choose in or choose out, because we do need to staff the buildings, and we need to make sure that we have a solid understanding of the students that are going to be in place, make sure we can schedule for them. You heard Mrs. Stout talk about we look at multiple scenarios and see what the schedule might look like for every one of those kids. We need to program for every single student coming into the building. And so because of that, we recommended that the students move, and that we don't have choice, so that we could really have a good, solid foundational program for every single student. And so probably, I think it's May, although Amy texted me something, so I could be wrong.
No, something else. You heard what I texted.
Oh, okay. So back in May, we made this decision, and we've been moving since that point, knowing that was the trajectory of our students, and that was the program that we were putting in place, K-8 in the school district. I still feel very solid about that decision. I feel like we're going to have a really great school culture for all of our students. We will make sure that we have some really great transition activities in place. Actually, coming up soon, we'll be pulling, our staff is going to find out their placements relatively soon, everybody in the district. We're not all the way there yet, but Megan's doing a phenomenal job pulling that together. And then we'll bring our staff together to start talking about what does transition look like for them, and what does it look like for the students and the parents, because honestly, the parents are going through that transition as well. And so we'll start working on that. But you saw in our update that we have a leadership conference that we'll be doing very soon at the middle level for students to become those student leaders and then help with that transition of students. So we feel good about that decision, and that is the direction that we recommended to the board and they did approve.
Thank you so much. And just to clarify, in regards to the presentation, yes, it was May 5th, 2021. The title is Actualizing All Forward, a Strategic Vision for the Future, launching fall 2022. So for reference, thank you. As we're looking at, listening to the comments, and again, another overarching subject has been the languages, and the discussions that have transpired in regards to the languages. Dr. McGloin?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that too. We spent a lot of time looking at our language program and looking at it from first through 8th grade. And talking about the retention of our language acquisition for students. With the new model that we have in place that we're proposing, that we are moving towards, our students actually will have about the same amount of time of instruction, but it's that consistent continuity of instruction that we believe will be able to have students leave the middle school with at least 2 years of language under their belt going into the high school with if they take their 4 years, they'll be going to the high school with Spanish 3 and possibly even higher. Right now, even with all of the programming that we have in place, most of our students are entering the high school at a level 2 language. So we understand that that consistent continuity of language instruction actually, we believe, will have our students acquire more language than they currently are. FLES happens once a week. And so we don't have that consistent language over time. And so we really believe this model will actually pay dividends for our students in the district. Would you like me to talk about math as well? I saw they talked about math. We didn't talk about advanced math. We still will be having our levels of math as they are. They'll be intact. We are teamed, but we will have some off-team math because it's impossible to not have a few off-team math classes, but we believe that we have identified which group of students so that it's the same group of students that are getting off-team math. But at every school, there will be some off-team math classes because we plan and intend to keep all of our math courses intact.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one last thing, as the comments were coming through, a lot of discussion or comments were regarding the Ask the Superintendent forum. And there's one piece that I did not communicate earlier, and it's in regards to the students having a virtual option. The communication that we put out a couple of weeks ago said we will explore it through the end of this week. We do not have a meeting coming up this week, public meeting. Therefore, I wanted to state publicly that we will be meeting as an administrative team tomorrow, and we will talk about the virtual option, extending the virtual option during the midst of this pandemic, or where we are now with the Omicron variant. Please expect communication to come out to you sometime midweek in regards to extending that option. I wanted to make sure that I put that out there because that was a topic that was mentioned a lot yesterday. Thank you.
And as a follow-up to that, I wanted to thank you and your team and all of the teachers and principals and everyone in the schools for really working so hard to keep our schools open. I know that it's a true desire of the district to keep our schools open and have our kids in school. And yet there are so many operational challenges. I know that the staff is getting up at 4 a.m. the administration 4 a.m. every morning to make sure that they're able to staff, make sure that there are enough bus drivers. And it is a lot of work and it's taking its toll. So I just wanted to publicly thank everyone from the superintendent to his administrative team, to the principals and the teachers and the bus drivers and the custodial staff, everyone, and especially the nurses and staff who are working incredible, 28-hour days for all of their work and dedication to keep our kids in school. Great, so I'm going to move on to, usually on our first the first Monday evening meeting of the month is an education committee meeting, so it's more presentations. Tonight, we do actually have an agenda item that we need to vote on. If you want to say that, Dr. Mamine?
Yes, thank you, President Klein. The administration recommends that the Board of School Directors approve the attached human resources actions, HR 1 and HR 2.
Thank you. I'll just note that that is a follow-up. It's a perfect follow-up to sort of the operational challenges. Normally, we could wait until the regular business board meeting to vote on this, but because of the challenges of keeping our schools staffed right now, we are doing this at sort of a special time. Are there any questions from the board about this? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? No. Motion passes. Okay, so we're coming to a close. Upcoming meetings. We have, on January 20th will be the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting at 8:30 a.m. here in the district administration offices. On Monday, January 24th, the regular business board meeting at 8 p.m. Here again, and on January 26th was the Wednesday, a communications committee meeting here at 7 p.m. As I like to do at the end of every meeting, just give you a highlight of upcoming presentations. Tomorrow, as a follow-up to lots of acronyms, one of them is MTSS, Multi-Tiered System of Support. The ISC, the Interschool Council, is having its hot topic tomorrow morning, I believe with Dr. McGloin and Dr. Gaudioso and possibly others, talking about what MTSS really is. You can find information about that in your school newsletters. Also upcoming, the ISD is presenting a Habits of Mind in conjunction with the Student Services meeting. So Student Services Department on January 25th. And then also there is an upcoming meet and greet with the superintendent and the Lmsb Student Services team sponsored by the Committee for Special Education, and that is on Wednesday, February 2nd at 7:30 p.m. Thank you all again for all of your time and energy. This meeting is now adjourned.